Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open a literal time capsule. We are going to look at a very specific snapshot in time, July 26, 2026, in the great state of Minnesota. By gathering up the local headlines, the weather reports, and those unique community stories from this exact single day, we're getting a brilliant real-time look at what actually happens when a massive summer heat wave collides head-on with everyday life. As you'll see, it is a day of extreme temperatures, bizarre disruptions, and just incredible community resilience. Okay, let's dive into this and look at our roadmap for today. First, we'll start with the anchor event, the triple-digit heat wave. Then, we'll look at the impacts on local sports, followed by community events and disruptions. And finally, we'll wrap up with how Minnesota life goes on. Starting right off with part one, the triple-digit heat wave. Let's kick things off with the inescapable reality that just hovered over the entire state that Sunday morning, setting the stage for literally every other headline we're going to look at today. 96 degrees. In her 7 a.m. weather report, meteorologist Katie Steiner warned that the heat was going to be the absolute dominant force of the day. But here's the thing, 96 degrees was just the baseline. When you factor in the humidity, the feels-like temperature was actually pushing well into the triple digits. And if you follow summer weather patterns, you know this kind of heavy, oppressive heat doesn't just make you sweat, right? It builds serious atmospheric tension. Because of that, Sunday also brought a lingering threat of severe afternoon weather. This wasn't just a warm day. It was a massively disruptive weather event that forced everyone to adapt on the fly. And you know, that adaptation starts right at home. The sheer intensity of the heat was so bad that local news pivoted from just giving us the data to actively answering practical survival questions for the community. In a Good Question segment, the focus was exactly this: how changing your daily routine can actually help your air conditioning run more efficiently. I mean, when the heat index hits the triple digits, our AC units are pushed to their absolute limits. It's a great reminder that extreme weather doesn't just happen outside. It entirely changes how we operate inside our own homes, forcing us to rethink our energy use and daily habits just to stay cool. Moving on to part two, impacts on local sports. Now, what's really interesting here is the ripple effect this weather had on Minnesota's massive summer sports culture. When you have a state that loves to be outside, triple-digit heat forces a major reckoning. We see a stark contrast that perfectly captures the vibe of the day. On one hand, major events were completely shut down or altered by the weather. The massive Target USA Cup youth soccer tournament actually had to be suspended due to poor air quality concerns. We're also seeing broader climate change impacts, forcing the Twin Cities Marathon to shift to a later date entirely. But, countering that, you have the stubborn resilience of sports that just powered through anyway. The 3M Open Pro-Am golf tournament forged ahead, and the Lumberjack World Championships over in Hayward, Wisconsin, kept the axes swinging despite the sweltering conditions. It's this fascinating tug-of-war between nature and athletic tradition. And let me tell you, the professional sports machine definitely didn't stop for the humidity. At the 3M Open, the world's top-ranked golfer, Scottie Scheffler, was still drawing massive, awestruck crowds. Meanwhile, safely indoors, the Minnesota Timberwolves were making huge roster moves, officially introducing LaMelo Ball and Josh Green, and in a really beautiful local homecoming, Olympic gymnast Suni Lee was back in action right at the Twin Cities gym where her incredible career first started. Heatwave or not, the sports world was relentlessly active. So the crucial point is that athletes are incredibly adaptable. Look at what golfer Thomas Campbell had to say about returning to the 3M Open. Despite the intense pressure of professional golf and the absolutely oppressive heat of the weekend, he just said, "I feel a little more relaxed." It shows that for these elite competitors, once they get into their element, the external disruptions, even triple-digit temperatures, just kind of fade into the background. Let's move to part three and see how this builds. Community events and disruptions. And this brilliantly illustrates the bizarre, honestly almost comical juxtaposition of Minnesota life on this specific day. On one hand, we have unstoppable community fun. People are braving the heat to attend Chaska City River Days, they're out shopping for ceramics at the Minnesota Pottery Festival, and flocking to the Mall of America for the return of Panda Fest. But at the exact same time, we have sheer heatwave chaos. Local lakes are experiencing actual fish kills directly caused by the high water temperatures. And in one of the most uniquely terrible summer disruptions imaginable, a Twin Cities woman reported her car was still reeking after having to drive through a literal manure spill on Highway 62. So you have these vibrant community celebrations happening right alongside sweltering, foul-smelling infrastructure headaches. But, you know, the celebrations absolutely hold their ground. A perfect example of this cultural resilience is CaraFest. On this incredibly hot weekend, CariFest was celebrating 33 years of uplifting Caribbean culture in the community. It just goes to show that major community milestones and rich cultural traditions are going to be celebrated with joy and energy, completely regardless of a 90-plus degree weather forecast. Finally, let's wrap up with part 4, Minnesota Life Goes On. As we zoom out from the macro headlines of the heatwave, we find these fascinating micro-stories. Looking at local history being preserved on this very day, we get a wonderful snapshot. Down in Faribault, an old skate sharpening shack has been totally transformed into a dedicated hockey museum. Up in Carlton, a local candy store continues to successfully blend delicacies from the past and the present. And the town of Kilkenny, they're continuing to embrace their identity as a little slice of Ireland right in the middle of the Midwest. Amidst the chaos of severe weather warnings, the preservation of local charm and history remains this quiet, steady constant. And the people are just as vibrant as the history. Look at these daily life triumphs making the news that Sunday. We've got a 93-year-old who is not only actively collecting golf balls, but is still out there playing volleyball. We have this heartwarming story of a Twin Cities cheerleading squad that bridges an incredible 80-year age gap among its members, helping seniors keep their memories sharp. And on the legislative front, a new Minnesota law is highlighted that allows unused veterinary drugs to be donated to pets in need. These are the stories of community spirit, intergenerational connection, and quiet progress that totally outshine the extreme weather narrative. Which brings us to our final thought today. We've seen how a single, sweltering day in July forced soccer tournaments to cancel, shifted marathon schedules, and pushed AC units to the absolute brink, all while people stubbornly continue to play golf, celebrate their culture, and build community. So, as extreme weather events increasingly become the norm rather than the exception, how will your community's traditions continue to adapt? Will they be shut down by the weather, or will they find a way to power through? It is definitely something to think about the next time you check the forecast. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep staying curious.